Trump has strengthened the BRICS. It's not what he expected to do or wanted to do, but it is what he has accomplished in doing.
China, Brazil, India, even Russia, they've all stood up to Trump, unlike the EU or, say, Japan.
The United States has thought, no, we'll break the BRICS. I called it delusional. Delusional because it's based on the delusion that the United States runs the show worldwide. And I think the events in the last few days show that the United States does not run the show. India did not cave in to Trump's demands. Brazil did not cave in. Lula said, we do not need an emperor, and said that he absolutely rejects that. Russia has not caved in. China said, you stop your exports of semiconductors, say goodbye to your auto industry. We don't export the magnets you need. So this is the truth of the world.
Do you believe that a deal Trump is trying to get from Russia will be accepted by Ukraine and Europe, given that neither of them are at the table?
If the U.S. and Russia agree on something, it doesn't really matter, frankly, whether Ukraine and Europe agree on it. Everybody's using the United States. It's the U.S. war machine. NATO is the U.S. Funding is the U.S. Zelensky is ruling by martial law, completely dependent on the U.S. Flow of funds and flow of arms. This war has been a war between the United States and Russia. And who are these European politicians? Starmer with his 20% approval rating, Merz with his 20% approval rating, Macron with his 20% approval rating. Their own publics don't even support them. Why should they dictate U.S. foreign policy? If the president is strong enough and understands his job and gutsy enough, he would call for peace. But Trump is not a strong, clear, gutsy politician. He's somebody who just loves accolades. The U.S. is, together with Israel, committing a genocide in Palestine. I don't think you should get a Nobel Prize under any conditions while you're also committing a genocide. This should even be remotely considered.
Hi, you're watching the Times of India podcast. I'm Aditi Prasad. Now, let me welcome our guest tonight, Professor Jeffrey D. Sachs. Professor Sachs is an economist, a public policy analyst, and one of the most important voices in geopolitics today. He's a professor at Columbia University. And thank you, sir, for joining us. Professor Sachs, welcome to the Times of India.
My great pleasure and honor. Thank you.
We hope this is going to be one of many podcasts with you going forward, because there's just so much. I've been listening to you for a very long time, so I'm very chuffed to have you here with me, sir. Let me start with the obvious, the Trump-Putin meeting in Alaska this coming Friday. Your take on this very huge diplomatic development that has ramifications perhaps for both U.S.-Russia relations and, of course, the futures of Ukraine and Europe.
I hope it signals a U.S. Approach to peace. I'm not sure. Of course, we're never sure with Trump. The war in Ukraine was caused by the United States expansion of NATO. It was caused by U.S. unilateral actions in abandoning the nuclear arms control framework with Russia, both the ABM Treaty and the Intermediate Nuclear Force Treaty. It was caused by a breakdown of diplomacy between the United States and Russia over many years. We don't know with Trump because he is unpredictable, short-term, not very logical, and contradictory, what this really signals. We've had no clear indication from U.S. officials about any real agreement. But if Trump says at this meeting, NATO will stop its enlargement, the U.S. wants peace and normal relations with Russia, the U.S. is ready to lift sanctions against Russia, this would pave the way for real peace, because there is no fundamental underlying reason for the U.S.-Russia conflict other than a 30-year effort by the United States to weaken Russia.
You said nothing has been decided yet, but Trump has very clearly hinted at Ukraine ceding territory. Now, Zelensky has clearly said he won't accept any ceding of territory. The Europe has, of course, rallied behind him. Do you believe that a deal Trump is trying to get from Russia will be accepted by Ukraine and Europe, given that neither of them are at the table?
If the U.S. and Russia agree on something, it doesn't really matter, frankly, whether Ukraine and Europe agree on it. Everybody's using the United States. It's the U.S. war machine. NATO is the U.S. Funding is the U.S. Zelensky is ruling by martial law, completely dependent on the U.S. Flow of funds and flow of arms. So all of this is begging, but if Trump says, no, we stop, they can say what they want, but either the war will stop or Russia will just completely defeat Ukraine, one of the two, and my guess is that the war would stop. So this is what I would do. I have no cause at all. I see no reason for the United States to give a veto to Zelensky. Who is he? What does he represent? The Ukrainian people want peace. This is what the most recent Gallup poll showed. He rules by martial law. Okay. What about the Europeans? Who are they to say no to peace? This war has been a war between the United States and Russia. And who are these European politicians? Starmer with his 20% approval rating, Merz with his 20% approval rating, Macron with his 20% approval rating. Their own publics don't even support them. Why should they dictate U.S. foreign policy? So, frankly, I don't think they can or should dictate U.S. foreign policy. I don't think Trump should aim for or care about what Ukraine and Europe say about this. If Trump ends the war, it's in Ukraine's overwhelming interest, and the Ukrainian people want that no matter what Zelensky says. I don't think that there's a security threat to the United States other than nuclear war, which is possible, and this is one of the reasons why all wars of major powers should be stopped. But there is no other threat other than the fact that the American people are sick of this. We're at war all the time. Trump came into office promising to end these wars. If he doesn't end the wars, if he's too weak, too incoherent, too inconsistent, too ignorant, too cowardly, what it will do is just further weaken the American faith in their own political institutions, which is already very, very low, I have to say. So America is in a political crisis. Trump hardly commands the widespread support of the American people. They would like him to fulfill a campaign pledge to end this war. It was supposed to be in 24 hours. Now it's the balance of 9 months or 8 months. He should get on with it.
On the battlefield, though, Russia is making big advances of late. Is that you think that is part of Putin's strategy going into this Alaska meeting with Trump? Who has the upper hand in this Alaska meeting, according to you?
Well, I think it's part of Putin's and Russia's strategy to win the war on the battlefield. I think they're ready to stop the war on the basis of clearly laid out terms, not on the basis of a ceasefire that settles nothing. The strange thing is that the call for an unconditional ceasefire became the rallying call of the warmongers, actually, in this perverse way. What it means is Macron, Merz, Starmer, and the U.S. neocons, they don't want to talk about underlying causes of the war. They see that Russia's winning on the battlefield, so they want that battle feel to be stabilized, at least without addressing the underlying root causes. I don't think Russia has an interest in that or will follow through in that way. I think what the Russians have been saying for years is get to the underlying causes. We don't want NATO on our border. We don't want American missile systems on our border. We want to be secure in our own neighborhood. Give us that, and then the war stops. So that's, I think, the difference of view right now. And my guess is that if the U.S. doesn't deliver on something more fundamental about the causes of the war, Russia will continue its war effort and will continue to win.
What, in your opinion, short of removing NATO from Russia's borders, what, in your opinion, Trump will have to offer Putin to stop this war? Because I don't think, from what we've heard Putin saying and his foreign minister saying, they are very clear about their war goals.
I think that there are basically three issues. One is no NATO enlargement. This, to my mind, is a sine qua non. It makes sense. I've always believed that Russia is right in this. I know, of course, through extensive history, that the United States promised no eastward enlargement of NATO all the way back in 1990 and then cheated on that promise after 1992. So this is condition number one. Condition number two is about territories. And there, Russia has made clear claims for about 20% of Ukraine's territory in 4 regions or oblasts, plus Crimea. And whether and how there's a basis for compromise, that is part of the negotiation. And then the third is the security arrangements that would follow. Ukraine's neutrality, a limit of militarization in Ukraine and along Russia's borders and by Russia. So some kind of security arrangement that would follow. These are the 3 main conditions for ending this war. They're all within reach. There was an agreement that was nearly completed in April 2022. Yeah. The United States stopped that agreement. That was called the Istanbul process. Putin has said what we need is the Istanbul plus process. That's basically correct. There are things to negotiate, but it's not that much room for negotiation. And ending the war on the basis of no NATO enlargement, Ukrainian neutrality, and some territorial changes is perfectly plausible, would be good for Ukraine, good for the United States, good for Europe, and should proceed.
You know Trump very well in terms of how he takes his foreign policy and how he's taking it forward. I'm not asking you to crystal gaze, but if you were to just talk about what you think is going to be the outcome of this summit.
Trump wants applause at the end of this summit. And so the question is how he judges what's going to get him applause. If good news, positive spin is going to get him applause, he'll aim for something along those lines. Remember, it's also possible that Russia and the United States announce things not related to Ukraine that are positive, at least to get some applause. So they could announce joint economic activities for developing minerals, or joint activities in the Arctic, or a return to nuclear arms talks, which would be a wonderful thing, by the way. So there are other areas where they could make positive announcements. When it comes to Ukraine, what is needed right now, as I've explained, is clarity on the U.S. side that it's going to stop the conditions that led to this war. But that won't give Trump easy applause, because the security state in the U.S. and in Europe will call him an appeaser, will attack him for being weak. If the president is strong enough and understands his job and gutsy enough, he would call for peace. But Trump is not a strong, clear, gutsy politician. He's somebody who just loves accolades. And so I'm not sure about the Ukraine part of this story.
So let's move to tariffs. The imposition of penalties on India, Brazil, and perhaps China going forward, we don't know. But Trump's strategy, do you think that's part of Trump's strategy to put pressure on Putin ahead of the Alaska meet? Cut off Putin's oil buyers. Do you think it will work?
No, it won't work. It is part of the strategy. It has succeeded in making the BRICS even more aligned. I said so many times in India, don't trust the United States. Don't consider that India has kind of snuck in as America's new partner against China. Don't allow India to be played that way. I think what the tariffs show is a certain vindication of what I was saying, because many people in India told me all through the spring, we have an inside track, we're going to be able to sign a good agreement and so forth. I never believed it. I don't believe the United States is a reliable partner for other countries. And I don't think that India's vocation is to align with the United States against China. This is a mistake, in my view. I like the BRICS because they stand for a new world order in which there's multipolarity and in which great powers, the U.S., Russia, China, India, maybe Europe someday, would have an equal role. And that's what the BRICS stands for, and Trump has strengthened the BRICS. It's not what he expected to do or wanted to do, but it is what he has accomplished in doing.
China, Brazil, India, even Russia, they've all stood up to Trump, unlike the EU or, say, Japan over his tariff on salt. China, largely because of its minerals advantage. Do you see a BRICS alliance forming? So far, the BRICS alliance that you just now praised was more an acronym than anything else, because the foreign policy compulsions of each of these countries were very different. How do you see these disparate things coming together against a united enemy, in this case, Trump's America?
I believe that the BRICS is something more than an acronym. I believe that it is major powers in different parts of the world saying we need a new multipolar and multilateral world. Interestingly, at the BRICS summit in Brazil this year, the outcome document is basically all gushing in love with the United Nations. So the BRICS said we need to make the UN system work. I like that. I believe in that. It says we don't want a U.S.-led world. What is the U.S.-led world? It's the U.S., Canada, Britain, European Union, Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and Singapore. That's the U.S.-led world. It's about 15% of the world population. The BRICS by themselves is about 50% of the world population, and they have the hearts and minds of the balance of the world, the other 35%. So 15% in the U.S. camp, 85% saying we don't want a U.S.-led world. We want a multipolar, multilateral world. I think that's right. So I see BRICS as basically helping to put that into place. Now, the United States has thought, no, we'll break the BRICS. We can threaten Brazil in our own hemisphere. We can make demands of Brazil, even demands of throw out a court case that has nothing to do with the United States against a former president. We can scare and entice India into our camp against China through the Quad and by threats of tariffs and so forth. We can defeat Russia. We can beat China in a trade war. Okay, I used one word for all of this over the recent years. I called it delusional. Delusional because it's based on the delusion that the United States runs the show worldwide. And I think the events in the last few days show that the United States does not run the show. And India did not cave in to Trump's demands. Brazil did not cave in. Lula said, we do not need an emperor.
Yeah.
And said that he absolutely rejects that. Russia has not caved in. China said, you stop your exports of semiconductors, say goodbye to your auto industry. We don't export the magnets you need. So this is the truth of the world. The world needs to understand the U.S. is 4.1% of the world population. It's maybe 14% of world output. It's maybe 12% of world trade. Get on with it. And I want the United States to behave itself and cooperate with other countries rather than threatening them every day.
I don't see that happening in Trump's America, really. So we still have another 3.5 years of bluster perhaps happening, because he doesn't seem to realize that. He thinks, for him, it's America.
I think you're correct. I think you're absolutely correct on that. That's why it's interesting what's going to happen at the end of this week. There are glimmers in Trump's mind of realpolitik that the major powers should work not in conflict with each other. But then they play games nonstop. The latest game, by the way, even as this discussion of Ukraine is going on, is the U.S. is playing games in the South Caucasus region, claiming a transport corridor that they're calling the Trump Highway to be leased by Armenia, right in Russia and Iran's neighborhood. This is a game. This is another geopolitical game that it will be unacceptable to the regional powers. And so the U.S. seems to have this penchant of being annoying to other countries.
And the Trump's tariffs entire strategy and about the America first and about making America great again, doesn't it defeat that entire purpose? Isn't Trump, by behaving in this manner with his allies, is he not alienating the world?
Of course he is. This is the America trying in any way, squirming, trying to hold on to its dominance. But with India rising, with China rising, with Africa rising, you can't hold on to the dominance that way. America's 4% of the world population. How could it run the world? So this is America trying to do what it can't do. And it tries to do it by bullying one country at a time. But if the countries that are being bullied say, no, stop, we learn to live like a civilized nation, it will work.
You talked about BRICS, and this is in continuation with that. Trump is clearly fearful of the BRICS de-dollarization move. The entire, President Putin and President Lula both have hinted at an alternate currency in the recent days. What do you think is the way forward?
Yeah, I think it's extremely important for the BRICS countries to work out mechanisms for using local currencies, whether it's the rupee or the ruble or the renminbi, but to use non-dollar payments, because the dollar payment system is used by the U.S. to weaponize foreign policy. It's the sanctions threat. And the way away from that is to have means of payments, settlements, and finance that does not go through the SWIFT banking system. India, it is said, has kind of dragged its feet on these alternatives. I think this is a mistake. What should be done is to move to a multi-currency world where the United States cannot unilaterally enforce sanctions through its dominance of payments and settlements.
He was the Nobel Peace Prize. He Do you think that's going to happen? Because he's not just him, he and his aides and even the White House, they've gone on a public forum and announced 6 wars ended, 6 conflicts ended. He's tried to take credit for the India-Pakistan, ending the India-Pakistan war, all because of that one Nobel, which Obama got and he didn't get. Do you think that's happening to him?
I think there's one thing to keep in mind. The U.S. is, together with Israel, committing a genocide in Palestine. I don't think you should get a Nobel Prize under any conditions while you're also committing a genocide. So I don't think that this should even be remotely considered. Norway continues to surprise me in its willingness to bow down to the United States. So it's possible, because this is a vote of basically the Norwegian parliament, I believe. But the fact of the matter is the U.S. is disgraceful in what it's doing in Palestine, because there's an active genocide underway before our eyes. 2 million people are being starved to death, actually. And now that starvation has reached such an extreme level, and it's on camera, it's on TikTok every day, that you have children dying before our eyes of starvation caused by the U.S. and Israel. So, no, I don't think he should get a Nobel Peace Prize.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. And we'll reach out to you again for a second part to this podcast. I don't want to take more time than you've allotted us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. We'll see you again soon.